The name of the exhibit is Activism Through Art, Revolutionary Art of the 20th Century. It features artists from Pablo Picasso to Barbara Kruger to Keith Haring. It is organized thematically based on what aspect of society the artist chose to focus on. The unifying factor of all these pieces is the underlying activist qualities that helped open important conversation and spark change in their time. This exhibit is meant to provoke thought and motivate change in the viewers. When you first enter the exhibit, the first piece you will see is Picasso's Guernica. The piece reveals the effects of war in a creative way while at the same time reminding us of its horrors. The next piece is Maya Lim's Vietnam War Memorial. The piece consists of a chevron shape with the first name of the first soldier who died at the very edge. As the viewer walks deeper, the list of names grows until it becomes overwhelming and the viewer sees just how many lives were really lost. Similarly to Picasso's Guernica, the memorial focuses on the toll of war and the individual pain by showing death and destruction, ultimately protesting war itself and influencing the idea of peace for the future. The next featured piece in the exhibit is Robert Frank's Drugstore, Detroit. While the artist was traveling in Detroit, he photographed an average drugstore lunch. This showed the public a more realistic view of how society was during that time period than other popular forms of media at the time. He exposed the issues of discrimination and segregation that the rest of the United States had been ignoring. By highlighting these issues, Frank helped spark the changes that came into fruition during the 1960s civil rights movement. Farther down is John Hartfeld's Just as in the Middle Ages, So in the Third Reich. It is another great example of racial activist art. The artist used photo montage to expose the truth about Germany during the time of Hitler and the Nazi movement. He compares Nazism with torture techniques that were used in the Middle Ages to create submissive citizens. The next piece is Barbara Kruger's Your Body is a Battleground. She utilized an advertisement aesthetic to call attention to and create controversy about feminist issues and conflicts. She also called attention to the dichotomy between males and females in society and conflicts that arise because of it, including violence and inequality. She challenges the archaic notion that women should not have agency over their own bodies. The aesthetic and language of the piece is assertive and commands attention in an attempt to break down the accepted values of society. The next featured piece is an untitled work by the Guerrilla Girls with the bold print, Do Women Have to Be Naked to Get into the Met Museum? It calls attention to the fact that female artists are oftentimes marginalized as unimportant. However, female nudes are featured in most art. This again raises the question of objectification and inequality that caused great conflict in the 20th century as women fought for their long-denied rights. The next piece features Kara Walker, a contemporary activist artist, which explores serious topics such as race, gender, violence, and sexuality in her work. This piece is called Insurrection. Our tools were rudimentary, yet we pressed on. The room exhibits large-scale reflections of antebellum South across the walls. In each silhouette, there are different obscene events taking place. This piece opens an interesting discussion about sexuality and racism that was relevant in antebellum South and remains relevant today. David Hammons is another contemporary artist who creates artwork for the African American community. His sculpture, Higher Goals, explores an idea that came from a group of African American teenagers who believed that their only path to success was through professional athletics. His art exposes the issue of race in America and suggests solutions for the conflicts that still occur. His art suggests that education should be more valuable than having unrealistic goals. The next piece is an untitled work by Keith Haring. During the 20th century, the AIDS epidemic was wreaking havoc on the gay community. His painting from 1986 pictures red figures sprawled across the floor with X's crossed over their faces. The figure's red outline was the color associated with AIDS, and the X's represent that they are victims that died of the fatal syndrome. Haring's goal was to raise awareness and improve the lives of people living with AIDS. The next artist is Felix Gonzalez Torres, who was another gay artist promoting AIDS awareness through his work. His conceptual art explored death and loss through a minimalist aesthetic. His billboards that he displayed all across New York showed a recently slept in bed to represent the loss of his lover who had died of the disease. Both of these artists did not win their own battle with the disease and died only 6 years apart from each other. The mission of this exhibit is to inform the viewer and trace the history of 20th century activist art that opened conversations and sparked change in order to continue on this path toward greater peace, equality, and security.
Mike, what the